Hello and welcome to Nullitaire Gaming, where we play games with 0 players. In other words, we play bots against each other. And in this series we're playing Root with the Clockwork expansion. We're putting all the Clockwork bots up against each other and seeing who wins. This is probably the last video in the series. I think this will be the last couple of turns before the end of the game. I recommend you watch the first videos in the series if you haven't seen them. I will put a link in the description to the full playlist, so you can find that if you wish. So let's continue on with our game. Here's the state of the board right now. You can see that the Vagabot is winning pretty handily right now at 22 victory points. All the other factions are trailing right around 12 or so victory points. However, you know, the Automated Alliance is in a very strong position right now. They've got a lot of sympathy on the board. Mostly in this game, the Eyrie has been keeping them in check, keeping their sympathy off the board for the most part. However, the Eyrie have been in turmoil the last couple of turns, and so the Automated Alliance has managed to spread sympathy quite a lot. So I think probably the Automated Alliance is going to score quite a few victory points this coming turn and may make a decent dent in that victory margin. So it's not entirely a foregone conclusion that the Vagabot will win. So let's see what happens. The Marquise is up first, and the order card is a rabbit. There is no craftable item on it. So we move right to daylight. The Marquise will battle in every rabbit clearing. The only clearing with any Marquise warriors is the only rabbit clearing with Marquise warriors is clearing 5, but there's no enemy there. So there'll be no battle for the Marquise this turn. Which means that there's probably going to be no stopping the Alliance. The Marquise has been pretty reluctant to get into battle this whole game. So, you know, on the Alliance's turn, they're probably going to score quite a few victory points since the Marquis is not going to do any battle here. Next up for the Marquis is Recruit. So they'll recruit 4 warriors evenly among their rabbit clearings. Again, clearing 5 is the only rabbit clearing ruled by the Marquise, so all 4 new warriors go in there. Build is next. Since it's a rabbit order card, they're going to build a workshop. The Marquise would like to put their workshop in clearing 5 since that has the most Marquise warriors, but there's no room for a building there. So looking at the second most Marquise warriors in a clearing, that's clearing 1, but there's no room for a building there either. So now going to the third most, we have clearing 6, but again there's no room for a building. So we look to the fourth most. Well, there's a tie between clearing 2, which also has no room for a building, and clearing 9, which does have room for a building. However, the Marquise does not rule that clearing, and so cannot place their building there. So it actually turns out that the Marquise does not get to place a building this turn. That is interesting, of course, because when we get to expand, that means the Marquise is going to basically take their turn all over again. So there might still be an opportunity for the Marquise to slow down the Automated Alliance before their next turn. Okay, well, move is next. They're going to move all but 3 of their warriors from each rabbit clearing to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces. That means, of course, that the Marquise is going to move a lot of cats out of clearing 5 and over into clearing 1, where there are the most enemy pieces. Okay, so that's 6 cats over into clearing 1. That's the end of a move phase, so now the Marquise will use Blitz Find the clearing you rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces, and move all but one warrior from that clearing. Then battle in the destination clearing. Well, the clearing that the Marquis rules of highest priority with no enemy pieces is clearly clearing 2. And there's no way to move all but one piece out of there. So it looks like the Marquis is actually not going to blitz this turn. Okay, now it's time for expand. One thing I forgot is expand only happens when there's 5 or fewer buildings on the map, which is not the case. There are 6. So it looks like the Marquis is not going to expand after all. Okay, so even though they didn't place a building this turn, there are too many buildings on the map, so they're not going to expand. We move on to evening. And they'll score victory points on the rabbit track, so that's 0. So they don't score any victory points this turn. They discard the order card, and that's the end of their turn. Well, it's the Automated Alliance's turn, and they also got a bird card for order, so this could be a potentially big scoring turn for them. Okay, so there's no craftable item on the order card, so we move to Revolt, but the order card is a bird, so they'll revolt in daylight instead. And we go to Public Pity. They did not revolt this turn, so they'll spread sympathy twice if you have 4 or fewer sympathetic clearings, or spread sympathy once if you have 5 or more. Well, they have 5 or more. There are quite a few on the map, so they'll spread sympathy once here. So looking at the map, they want to put their sympathy token in a clearing that's adjacent to sympathy, and that has the fewest enemy warriors. Okay, well, every clearing at this point is adjacent to sympathy. So, and the order card's a bird, so any clearing will do. So they're just looking for the space with the fewest enemy warriors. Okay, well, they can't choose 2, though, of course, because the keep is there. So they can't place any tokens in 2. So it's between 5, which has 3 enemy warriors, 6, which has 3 enemy warriors, and 12, which has 2. So 12 it is. They place sympathy in 12, and they score 3 victory points for that. So here's the beginning of their victory point haul. Puts them up at 16. Okay, that's Public Pity. So they move on to Daylight, which now, well, they spread sympathy again. This is the last of their sympathy tokens. It's either got to go into clearing 5 or into clearing 6, both of which have 3 warriors. So they will go with the highest priority, which is 5. Place sympathy there. Because there are 3 warriors of the same faction, though, martial law comes into effect, and they score 1 fewer victory point than they normally would. They would only score 4 victory points on this, though, so they still get 3 victory points. So that brings them up to 19. Definitely closing the gap. Time for Surprise Revolt. But all the bases are on the map, so actually this isn't going to do anything. So the bird card is not as powerful as I initially suspected. Okay, so there'll be no revolt this turn. We move on to evening. Organize. In each clearing with a base and 3 or more Alliance warriors, remove all Alliance warriors there and spread sympathy. Well, there is one such base in clearing 1. There are 3 warriors there. So they'll remove all those warriors and spread sympathy once again. Because all of their sympathy tokens are now on the map, this cannot spread priority now comes into effect. If you cannot place a sympathy token, simply score 5 victory points. So as predicted, the Alliance has leapfrogged the Vagabot and taken over first place with 24 victory points now. Next up is Recruit. The Alliance will place a warrior at each base. Before we end the Marquise's turn, we have to remember Wildfire, which says we spread sympathy, but they do not score points for placing the sympathy token. Well, they don't have any more sympathy tokens to place. So ordinarily that would mean that they score 5 victory points, But Wildfire specifically says that they don't score victory points for this. So Wildfire will do nothing this turn. The Vagabond is up next, and they are 8 victory points away from victory. And it seems to me that if they don't score those 8 victory points this turn, then the Alliance is likely to win the game on their next turn. It's not very likely that anyone's going to be able to stop the Alliance at this point. So we'll see. Let's see if the Vagabot can manage to score enough points this turn. Vagabot also gets a bird card, so that's promising for the Vagabot. So, but it does not have a craftable item. Vagabot will not slip into the forest. It's got plenty of undamaged items. So we'll go immediately to Daylight Actions, and Explore will be first. So Explore says to move to the nearest ruin. However, there aren't any ruins anymore. The Vagabot has explored them all. So there'll be no exploration this turn. Next up is Quest. And the current quest card is a rabbit. And the Vagabot happens to already be in a rabbit clearing. So Vagabot will simply exhaust 2 items and score 1 victory point. The new quest card is also a rabbit card. Okay, well Vagabot only has 2 unexhausted items and still needs 7 victory points, so I guess it seems pretty unlikely that the Vagabot is going to manage to score enough points this turn. But 8 is next, so let's see what happens. So because Helper is in play, Vagabot scores an extra victory point when using Aid. So if we look around, we see that the Eyrie have 2 crafted items, the Alliance has 1 crafted item, and the Marquise has 3. So, you know, the most points that the Vagabot could score here would be 4, if they could take 3 items from the Marquise and score 4 points for that. However, they don't have the Vagabot doesn't have enough items to do that anyway. It only has 2. So there's no way it could do that. It has to exhaust 1 item to take for each item that it takes. So it doesn't have enough items to do it anyway. And in any case, Aid says, target the player in your clearing with the most items. Okay, well, there is a faction in Vagabot's clearing, and it's the Alliance. So Vagabot is forced into aiding the Alliance. The last thing Vagabot wants to do. Okay, so the Alliance has 1 item, so Vagabot will exhaust 1 of its items and take that item, scoring 2 points, and that means the Automated Alliance would draw 2 cards for this, but of course, having no hand, that means that the Automated Alliance also scores 2 points. Just to be clear about that, it's Helper that makes it so that the aided player draws 2 cards instead of 1. So the Automated Alliance would draw 2 cards here. But again, since they don't have a hand of cards, no bot does, they score victory points per card instead. Okay, so both Vagabot and the Automated Alliance scored 2 victory points each, and they are neck and neck up to the wire here. So Vagabot still has 2 items to use, since it just gained 1, and it's time for battle. So for battle, the Vagabot moves to the nearest clearing with the enemy with the most victory points, normally, but because a Berserker is in play, they focus on most pieces instead. Okay, well that means that Vagabot is simply going to stay where he is and target the player in the current clearing with the most pieces, and that means, well, just that lonely sympathy token there. Okay, but also at the beginning of battle, because Marksman is in play, Vagabot just deals an immediate hit. Okay, so this battle is going to be very boring indeed. The immediate hit just removes that sympathy token. Okay, and of course, because popularity is in play, Vagabot doesn't even get to score a victory point for that. Because Adventurer is in play, the Vagabot can't battle more than once. So that's the end of daylight actions for the Vagabot. We move to evening. Well, Adventurer does say quest as many times as possible at the end of daylight. But the issue is, Vagabot does have one item still left to use, but the quest is rabbit, and Vagabot is in a rabbit clearing. So Vagabot is already where it needs to be in order to do the quest, but doesn't have enough items to actually exhaust to do it. So I think in this case what happens is Vagabot simply doesn't do anything and just leaves that one unexhausted item there. Okay, so we move on to evening. So if Vagabot has any damaged items, refresh 4 undamaged items. If you have none, refresh 6 instead. So Vagabot has no damaged items, so we'll refresh 6 exhausted items. Repairing items would be next, but there are no items to repair. So that is just the end of the Vagabot's turn. So the Eyrie are up next. And I just want to point out the difficult situation they are in, and they've been in for a couple of turns. So the only roosts they have on the board are in 12 and 8, both of which are fox clearings. So anytime they get a order card that's not either a fox or a bird, they go into turmoil, because the first part of the decree requires them to place a warrior, and if they have either a mouse or a rabbit card in their decree, they're not going to be able to place a warrior in a clearing with a roost that matches that column. So that sends them into turmoil. Okay, so what do you reckon? Are they going to manage it this turn? Is the order card going to be a rabbit or a mouse and send them into turmoil, or will they finally get out of this rut with a fox or a bird and be able to actually do something this turn? Well, let's take a look. Oh no, it's a rabbit. Okay, that means turmoil once again for the Eyrie. The order card did not have a craftable item, so it simply goes into the decree. But of course it's not going to be there very long. As we look to the first part of daylight, resolving the decree, they need to recruit first, and of course the very first column they come to is that rabbit column, but as I said, there are no rabbit clearings with a roost on the map, and therefore, because of nobility, okay, they fall into turmoil if they can't place a roost or a warrior. Here's a situation where they cannot place a warrior, so they fall into turmoil. But again, it's not so bad. Because of nobility, they don't lose points. They actually gain points. But that's, it's not going to be much help in this game, They're so far behind that a couple victory points and losing the rest of their turn is not really going to help them much. Alright, but in any case, that's what happens. So nobility kicks in. The Eyrie fall into turmoil, and they're going to score 2 victory points for the two bird cards they have. That puts them up to 16. And then they're going to discard the decree and go immediately to evening. So they'll lose that rabbit card that just went in there, and they'll go immediately to evening, where they will score victory points according to how many roosts they have on the board, which is 1. So they'll get 1 more victory point, and that'll be the end of their turn. And again, I just want to reiterate what I said in a previous video. I don't think Relentless or Swoop come into effect when the Eyrie go into turmoil. I mean, there's nothing specifically that says that gives a ruling on this, as far as I know. But Relentless says after resolving the decree, well, we didn't resolve the decree. We didn't get there. And Swoop says at the end of daylight. Well, we didn't really get to the end of daylight because we were told to go to evening. So in my thinking, I don't think either of these things actually happen. And I think thematically that makes sense. The Irie are in turmoil, so are they really going to be able to remove defenseless buildings or add extra warriors? Okay, I don't think so. Alright, so anyway, that's the end of the Irie's turn. So that's the end of the round. It seems to me likely that the Alliance is going to win on their turn. The only turn before theirs now is the Marquise, and it's unlikely that the Marquise is going to do much to stop them. But in any case, the Marquise is up first. Let's see what happens. The Marquise gets a rabbit card with no craftable item. So I guess this is gonna look very much like the last turn, since that was also a rabbit card. But battle is first, so they're going to battle in each rabbit clearing. Well, this time the rabbit clearing that they can actually battle in does have an enemy piece, because there's now sympathy there. Okay, so the Marquise will battle that sympathy token in clearing 5. And as I said in previous videos of this series, when fighting the defenseless sympathy tokens, it's always the same outcome no matter what the roll is. The defenseless token is always removed and one warrior is always removed. So we'll just do that. The token is always removed because it's defenseless, and so it doesn't matter what the attacker rolls. They'll always do an extra hit and remove the defenseless token. And the warrior is always removed because of veterans, which gives the not veterans, informants. Defenseless sympathy tokens benefit from automated ambush. So their defenseless tokens still get the automated ambush ability, which says in battle as defender with Alliance warriors and sympathy tokens, as it turns out, you deal an extra hit. Okay, so no matter what the roll is, the attacker gains an extra hit against the defenseless token, and the defenseless sympathy token gains an extra hit because of automated ambush. So it's always 1 and 1. Again, because of popularity, the Marquise does not get any victory points for removing that sympathy token. Recruit is up next, so the Marquise is going to add 4 new warriors. They all go into clearing 5, since it's the only clearing the Marquise rules. The only rabbit clearing the Marquise rules. Build is up next, and again, since it's a rabbit, the Marquise would like to build a workshop. But we have the same situation again. If we count down from the clearings with the most Marquise warriors, we find that they mostly have no space for buildings. So clearing 1 has the most Marquise warriors, but there's no room. Clearing 5 is next, but there's no room. Clearing 6 is next, but there's no room. Clearing 2 is next, but there's no room. And then clearing 9 is next, but the Marquise doesn't rule that clearing, so can't place a building there. So once again, the Marquise does not place a building this turn. Move is up next. The Marquise is going to move all but 3 of their warriors from each ordered clearing to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces. So once again, we're going to see warriors marching over to this quite serious front going on over here, which has become something of a Cold War, I guess, because the Marquise never seems to find a way to battle there. But in any case, more cat warriors in clearing 1. Once again, because a move just happened, Blitz would happen next. But the clearing they rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces is still clearing 2, which has only 1 warrior, and so there's no extra warriors there to move, so Blitz doesn't happen this turn. Expand is next, and even though the Marquise did not place a building, again, they have more than 5 buildings on the map, so expand doesn't happen. We move on to evening, and the Marquise scores according to the ordered card on the track. The ordered card is rabbit, so they score 0 points. And that's the end of their turn. So it's the Automated Alliance's turn. They drew a bird card again. But again, that probably doesn't matter. They can't really revolt at this point. But in any case, they only need 4 points to win the game, and it's very unlikely. In fact, I think it's impossible at this point that they not get at least 4 points. Okay, well, let's walk through it, make sure everything is done correctly. Okay, there's no craftable item on the order card, so we move to Revolt because it's a bird card. We skip that, and we move to Public Pity. They will spread sympathy once because they have 5 or more sympathy tokens on the map. There are actually only 3 clearings on the map that are even possible to place sympathy. Every clearing is either sympathetic or it contains the keep, and so no sympathy token can go there. So the only clearings that are even available for placing sympathy are 5, 10, and 6. Because it's a bird card, the order of the clearing doesn't matter, so they'll go with the clearing with the fewest enemy warriors, which of course is 10. And they score 3 victory points for that. So they only need 1 more, and they win. Okay, Public Pity is over. So what's up next? What's going to happen now? Oh, more spreading sympathy. Okay. Well, this sympathy token has to go into either 6 or 5, which both have 3 warriors each. So their tiebreaker doesn't come into effect. Their tiebreaker being fewest enemy warriors. So they'll simply go with the lowest priority, which is 5. Place their sympathy there. Ordinarily, they'd get 4 victory points for that, but because of martial law, they're placing a sympathy token in a clearing with 3 or more warriors of an enemy player, because there are 3 cats there. So, they only score 3. Okay, well, that's enough for the Alliance to win the game. So that's our game. Our victor is the Automated Alliance. And in this game, so much depended upon the luck of the draw, of course. That had a big impact on the game. The Eyrie really got stuck in a turmoil loop and were not able to get out of it. In the early part of the game, they were really keeping the Automated Alliance in check, mostly because the Eyrie are able to remove undefended pieces very easily, given their relentless trait. And so they were able to remove, to keep sympathy tokens in check pretty easily. So the Vagabond got off to a big start and looked like Vagabond looked unstoppable. And I think a lot of the deal with the Vagabond is that most of the other, well, all the other factions, as far as I can tell, well, really the Marquise and the Eyrie, when they battle, they tend to prioritize most warriors or most pieces, and that's generally not Vagabond. So Vagabond doesn't really get a lot of battle. It doesn't have to defend itself in battle very much against these other bots. So I think Vagabond was able to kind of move around and do whatever it wanted without being harassed too much by the other factions. The Marquise really, the Marquise mostly just kind of sat in a corner, sat over here for the most part, where the keep is, and just kind of built a little, a little stronghold, kind of spread out just to the clearings adjacent and filled them up with buildings, and then just really kind of didn't do much, but just get more and more warriors. Even when the Marquise did kind of, build up this huge army over here in Clearing 1, and they just never did anything. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and no battles ever happened there, because in order for a battle to happen, the Marquise has to somehow draw, the fox card or a bird card to make that happen, and that just never happened. Okay. So the Alliance was mostly able to just sit and wait until everybody else got a run of bad luck, and then was able to just spread sympathy far and wide, and rule the game. So I think the Alliance doesn't depend as much on luck as the other factions do. The Alliance can more or less play their game no matter what cards come up. Right? They can always revolt on their turn. They can always spread sympathy. The only difference is with a bird, they can sometimes do this surprise revolt instead of the regular revolt. Well, that's not much of a difference, right? Whereas for the other factions, you know, for the Marquis, getting a bird card is huge because Escalated Daylight is so much stronger, right? And for the Eyrie, of course, a bird card is huge because that's much more versatile in their decree. Okay, so I think the other factions just depend upon that luck more than the Alliance. Well, I mean, the Vagabot doesn't really depend on that luck either. That's, I guess, part of the reason why the Vagabot was running away with the game early too, because you know the Vagabot again is also very versatile. A lot of different things to do. The other factions mostly ignore him. So, yeah. Seems like the Vagabot and the Alliance are really the only two major contenders when putting these four bots up against each other. Okay, I would certainly never put my money on the Marquis. The Marquis is just very slow. You know, not particularly aggressive at all. Mostly the Marquis just kind of sits there and builds a big stronghold, and you know, if the other factions just kind of ignore that, I mean, the Marquis can get, you know, 3 or 4 points a turn, but you know, that's about it. Plod along. And the other factions can mostly just ignore it. The Eyrie, I mean, if the Eyrie gets lucky enough to build up a strong decree, then could do a lot of damage on its turn. You know, if it managed to avoid turmoil. These traits, Relentless and Swoop, are really strong, very powerful. So again, if the Eyrie can stay away from turmoil, then, you know, it's possible I could see the Eyrie pulling out a win in a Nullitaire game. But it would have to be pretty lucky. Okay. I think the Marquis, even with good luck, is unlikely to win, even if it drew a bird card every single turn. That might be an interesting experiment. Let the other three factions play normally and and give the Marquis a free bird card every turn and see what happens. Then I might bet on the Marquis. I think that'd be interesting. Okay, anyway, we've come to the end of our game. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. I was surprised by the ending. I thought 2 videos ago that the Vagabond was going to be unstoppable and this was going to be a pretty boring ending, but that was actually quite exciting that the Alliance kind of came out of nowhere and took the game. Again, that's because of the Eyrie and their lack of ability to keep the sympathy tokens in check because of the turmoil loop they got themselves in, having only 2 clearings, both with the same order. Alright, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series. I certainly did. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.